What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, and I'm here today with a different type of video. I initially was going to be ranking the smartest characters in Naruto, but A, that's kind of boring in my opinion, and B, the more I looked at it and talked with different people, the more I found out that intelligence in Naruto, at least the way I see it, isn't simply, A character greater than B character. In my opinion, and the way I have this video structured, is that there's certain criteria where characters are stronger at a certain aspect, which can correlate back to intelligence and them being smart. The categories that I've chosen to talk about in today's videos are deductive ability, ability to analyze an opponent and their jutsu, manipulation, ability to persuade others towards your desired outcome, Jutsu Intelligence, ability to use one's arsenal to the maximum efficiency, general knowledge, simple book smarts and knowledge, and Foresight, the ability to prepare for or account for future actions to the desired outcome of the individual. I will then talk about which character in the show I think encapsulates all these categories and is the most well-rounded. So with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this different type of content. I'm trying to keep the ball rolling. This intro's still going. Let's get into the video. For deductive ability, I have Kakashi, predicting battle strength, analyzing the strong and weak points, simulating every contingency. He's able to summarize them with accuracy and clarity. Kakashi's abilities as a shinobi have always been something to marvel at. With his superior intellect, he was always impressive. However, this was taken to another level when he obtained the Sharingan. Displayed in almost every one of his fights, one of the best examples being his fight with Pain, where he is fishing for intel with constant substitution. Even with reinforcements, Kakashi was the driving force in that skirmish, being the one to come up with the plan to discover the 5-second interval when the Diva Path could be attacked. This is consistent with Kakashi's deductions on Deidara being primarily a ranged fighter, along with perfectly identifying Deidara's objective, or with Kakuzu and how Kakashi kills off one of his hearts after deducing Kakuzu uses Earth Style. Kakashi would continue displaying an impressive ability to adapt to new situations, such as his conflict with Obito, where he was able to deduce how Obito's Kamui worked, albeit due to the fact that they shared a jutsu. He was still able to get the better end of Obito by sending a Naruto clone into the Kamui dimension to break his mask. Obito himself having a great deal of combat intelligence, an example of this being how he flipped the strategy Danzo's personal aides came up with just right on itself and letting them hit each other. This is consistent when the 10 Tails appears and beyond, as Kakashi relinquishes control of Squad 7 to Sasuke, yet instantly reigns in leadership the moment Kakashi's power becomes relevant again. He has new perception abilities. Now you can make a case that this category specifically, there is a lot of characters that can fill in the blank. One people might point to is maybe Minato being able to deduce Obito's Kamui just off one small encounter with him, which also extends into his fight with Jubito. This is all impressive. The reason I have Kakashi in the forefront here is due to the fact that Kakashi himself uses such a vast array of jutsu, over 1,000 as he's touted as the copy ninja, that it makes it easier for him to identify with the strategies that his opponent's using, especially since there's a good chance he employs a similar strategy in his own arsenal. So just coupled with the fact that his perception and clarity powers with his intellect, along with having an arsenal that he can always draw reference from, makes him the strongest fighter in terms of deductive ability. For manipulation, I have Obito. Now, while a lot of people are going to say Madara big-brained Obito, I disagree. Madara actually does not do that much manipulation in this series compared to Obito, who had to take the plan of groom Nagato and Rene rebirth Madara. That was the plan. That's all Madara told him. Obito was the one who had to work behind the scenes for 17 years using the Akatsuki and by extension Pain, Sasuke, the third Mizukage, all while playing chess with Itachi, deceiving Minato, and just about the rest of the Shinobi War into moving into a war against him under the threat of Madara Uchiha. Keep in mind too, a lot of characters Obito was using had their own agendas and goals that Obito warped to his advantage by altering the flow of information. This can be seen a couple times throughout the series, one example being how he doesn't lie to Sasuke ever about the truth about Itachi, but does kind of manipulate him using information such as Danzo being present at the 5 Kage summit that he was going to use to take the Kage hostage, in which case it's kind of a win-win for him and Sasuke. Madara didn't simply play Obito either. A lot of people don't realize this, but Obito never really intended on bringing Madara back, as he added the 8 and 9 tails to the Geto statue to become the 10 tails Jinchuriki before Madara arrived to the front. Obito openly says he does not consider Madara his ally, was aware of the tag Madara put on his heart, which Madara says he wasn't supposed to be aware of, with Obito actually succeeding in becoming the 10 tails Jinchuriki. Had everyone in Naruto not defeated Obito, Madara was gonna, in all honesty, get wiped. The only part where Madara really reveals some crazy concept to Obito is when he reveals that he placed the tag on Rin's heart, which in the grand scheme of everything didn't matter too much. It's more so impressive that he threw Obito into darkness. Madara's whole plan was contingent on Obito being able to execute it. Madara, while throwing Obito into darkness, doesn't display nearly as many manipulation feats as Obito, especially considering Madara only had to deal with one person, whereas Obito had to deal with an entire world with constantly evolving motives and problems that Obito would have to deal with. A lot of stuff that Obito had set in motion or had set up, like Nagato using Rin Rebirth, were directly foiled. So he was doing a lot of freestyling too. Another like example of that being how he had planned for Sasuke to take Nagato's place to use Rin Rebirth for him. So he was always moving and just kind of like changing the plan up. Regardless though, Obito does display more impressive manipulation feats than Madara. You can maybe say Zetsu, you know, that's a fair response. However, I don't think Zetsu, in terms of being a manipulator, is that impressive. Simply considering the fact that all he had to do was lie. That's it. That's all he had to do. He didn't really have to play anybody. I know like Kishimoto wanted to paint him as this big brain fighter, but when you really consider like the movie, it's the same thing with Madara. He didn't really do anything. He just feigned that he was loyal to them just to like backstab at the very last second. You could maybe say he altered the Uchiha tablet, but again, this plan was so loose that it wasn't really a plan of itself. He was just kind of hoping one of the reincarnations would come again that he could try and finesse. It didn't really work until Madara's like own ambition like came into the fray. Jutsu Intelligence. Now for this slot I have Sasuke. Sasuke is a jack of all trades type of fighter. We've seen this throughout his many fights in the show against Deidara, where he displays the ability to use Raiton to engage and counter Deidara's bombs, against the Raikage where he was able to use Enton. Nature change with no prior experience. It said in the data book that Sasuke created the technique on the spot when the Raikage was falling on him. Against Danzo, where he showed great skill with his Genjutsu, placing Danzo in a subtle Genjutsu. Sasuke's ability to evolve and use his arsenal mid-combat made C convinced that Shinobi as like a race or like as a faction are still evolving, which is a crazy blank statement to make after seeing Sasuke in just one bout. This persists with Sasuke, who achieves the EMS or Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, adapting Enton into his Susanoo and replicating Madara's feat of cloaking the Nine Tails in his Susanoo off deduction alone. Sasuke would go on to attain the Rinnegan, and Sasuke, while new to his Rinnegan, not only convinces Madara that he'd be a better pick for a vessel than Obito, which is a feat in of itself, but more impressively, Sasuke continues to advance in his skill with his Rinnegan to the point he can rival the Sage of Six Paths himself in skill in merging disseminated chakra from all nine-tailed beasts separated into his Susanoo as a vessel. In an unrivaled manner, I might add, Kurama making this statement after bearing witness to the Six Paths himself, Kaguya, Madara, Obito, and all these very intelligent fighters, Kakashi, and never once does he make any real statement like this. Whereas Sasuke has demonstrated the ability to use his arsenal in the most creative ways, that coupled with his natural intellect makes him one of the most formidable and well-balanced shinobi in the verse, being the only one directly compared to the Sage of Six Paths in skill alone. More specifically, him using the Rinnegan in such a skilled and nuanced manner. This just extends to every one of Sasuke's arsenal when it gets fully amped, his Chidori variants, how he gets the most mileage out of that. His Enton variants, he's just consistently making the most out of his arsenal. If you really think about how many changes in chakra form he performs with Raiton and Enton in the series, it's nothing short of remarkable. You don't really see too much like it. General Intelligence. Now, for this spot, I have Kabuto. Now, I think Kabuto is ridiculously slept on in terms of how smart he actually is, having a lot of really good showings, even dating back to part 1, where in combat scenarios, he could even get the better end of Kakashi, where he's able to escape from Kakashi, quoted as, even in front of Kakashi, Kabuto easily avoids trouble. And when Tsunade switched all of his nerve endings mid-fight, Kabuto instantly adapted to the change and could continue fighting. Just really solid stuff, extending into the war arc where he essentially plays shogi with the allied forces, controlling every battlefront and adapting to the strategies that the shinobi employed against his Edo Tensei all at once. Kabuto is probably the most extreme example of a bookworm in the show, doing extensive amounts of research on all kinds of subjects like his predecessor before him. Examples being Hashirama cells, which him and Orochimaru studied vigorously. A little bit more on that in a second, but there's also a lot of little stuff that Kishimoto doesn't really point out to us that really give a lot of nuance to Kabuto. For example, how he was able to locate the corpses of Itachi and Nagato, despite the fact that Obito took those corpses with him from their respective fights. And I do think that says something about Kabuto's intellect and researching ability. Kabuto's tenure as spy would only add to all this, giving him extensive knowledge on other nations and jutsu that would just only increase over time. Couple this with his extensive knowledge on mythical ninjutsu, having jutsu instincts and sharpness that surpass Tsunade even in her prime, along with him being Orochimaru's main caretaker for years on end. Kabuto is even able to somewhat deduce the Uchiha tablet based on theories he and Orochimaru had, as noted by Madara, which goes in line with Kabuto's extensive knowledge of Hashirama cells that he implemented into Madara. Kabuto should have surpassed Orochimaru in this category at least, as he follows up on a lot of Orochimaru's shortcomings, that being completing the Edo Tensei, becoming a perfect sage. But if you want to say Orochimaru surpasses him after absorbing the intel Kabuto attains after he comes back, that'd be reasonable as well. Maybe one of the few people I could see rivaling him is Orochimaru, or maybe possibly like Tobirama for strategy. For this slot, I have Shikamaru. Shikamaru requires very little introduction, IQ over 100, predicting the next 200 moves of his opponent, gaining praise from Kakashi, Obito, and pretty much everybody else in the series in terms of his intelligence. You knew he was going to be in this video. Shikamaru has always been a master class strategist. Now, you may say Shikamaru may be in a different slot, and again, while I think you can make a case for any of these characters being another character slot, I believe this series actually leans towards strategy being Shikamaru's strongest suit. This is more so implicitly shown through his shogi matches with Asuma and Shikaku Nara. Shogi, also known as Japanese chess, is a strategy board game for 2 players, yielding an 81 square board with 20 pieces each, with this narrative carrying not only into his fights with Kakuzu and Hidan, but more so into the war arc where he becomes the new brains of the allied shinobi forces after the HQ is destroyed. He is now playing shogi against Madara, Obito, and Ten Tails, with the allied shinobi forces being his pieces. Now, you could say in this department, Shikaku Nara would probably be a lot stronger since he does a lot of the crazier strategies in the war arc. It's more so the fact that Shikamaru at such a young age is very comparable, that the minute HQ is destroyed, he's even able to create grand scale strategies like his father on the fly, attempting to stop the Ten Tails Beast Bomb by having everyone create minor Earth style walls and having the Eight Tails change the trajectory upwards. So it's more so the fact that Shikamaru at such a younger age is comparable to his father, that he would just continue to improve and surpass him. But if you wanted to make a case for like Shikaku Nara being above him, that's also very fair, as their father and son, they're essentially the same character. It's just I believe this series more so implies that it's a rite of passage with Shikamaru surpassing him. For my Foresight slot, I have Itachi. Now, Itachi's probably the closest thing you can get to a perfect shinobi aside from Kakashi, especially when it comes to Foresight. Itachi was able to plant a trap for Obito despite not having full knowledge of Obito and his abilities, successfully killing him and forcing him to use Izanagi, a feat someone like Conan required ridiculous amounts of prep after years of observing Obito's abilities. This being no small feat, as getting any hit on Obito at this point in the series, even in the war arc, was a huge deal for Naruto and Co. It doesn't just stop there, however. Itachi had planned even further for the eventuality that Obito would survive, and planting Koro Matsukami into Naruto that would affect Sasuke after he achieved the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and attacked Konoha. Technically, Itachi's first trap was successful, and the second one would have been as well, so he had prepared for the worst outcome in the path that had followed it had Sasuke not returned to the Leaf to be named a hero. This is exemplified further with Hiruzen's exposition of how Itachi, even as a child, only thought about the future of shinobi and constantly had misgivings regarding those futures, a mindset akin to that of Itachi. Itachi was still able to act as a sort of mentor to Sasuke, who had been continuously learning about the shinobi world and its framework at this time in the series. Sasuke, who had spoken to the very shinobi who created the same framework, gave Sasuke an answer that Itachi himself exemplified throughout his life, constantly worrying for Sasuke and the village's future. This is taken to the point that Sasuke based his whole definition of Hokage surrounding Itachi's life. The fact that Obito was moving so cautiously around Itachi, and you even have people like Danzo just giving praise to Itachi, says a lot about the character's foresight and mindset on things for the future. But in terms of actual feats on events that he wasn't there for, I think Itachi also has the best Foresight feats. Honorable mentions. There's a lot of honorable mentions for this video. Honorable mention being Naruto, who is ridiculously slept on with his analytical abilities via shadow clones and unpredictability in combat, making him very deadly even to characters vastly superior such as Kaguya. Kakazu, who is acknowledged as an impressive tactician by Shikamaru with the maxed out mind stat in the third data book, which notes how he will analyze an opponent's power and work out a strategy on the spot, having abilities backed up by extensive knowledge and experience. Sasori, who created one of, if not the most potent poison in the verse, being able to recognize when opponents are adapting to a mid-combat and seeing the need to change his combat approach, again also having a maxed out mind stat in the third data book. Minato, who showed great analytical ability in his fight with Obito and even Jubito and even further in his other fights in the series. Also created the Rasengan based off the Tailed Beast Bomb, as well as enhancing the Flying Raijin Jutsu that Tobirama created. Just great stuff for Minato. Also extended to Tobirama, who created such a plethora of jutsu. He created the Edo Tensei, space-time Flying Raijin. It's just crazy what Tobirama had in order to have a wealth of intellect throughout the series. There's just so many characters that are like deserve to be mentioned, but I can't for the sake of talking about the video. I could mention Kurama, who has great intelligence feats, analyzing Sasuke's Rinnegan throughout the duration of the war and relaying the information to Naruto and how Sasuke can't do certain things with his Rinnegan because he's not quite used to it yet. The list just goes on and on. So if there's somebody I didn't like make the list, it's more so for the fact that I can't talk about that many characters because everybody's smart, bro. Everybody is, even the dude in orange. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want from me? For my overall slot, I have Madara. Now, I would say Madara is the most balanced out of these factors, excelling in every category, which is only amplified by the fact he's one of the strongest characters in the show, making it so everything's amped up and he's able to extend on each of these. He shows great deductive ability, being able to instantly deduce the nature of combination jutsu from the 5 Kage, jutsu from Shikaku, and even Obito's Kamui. Shows a good mind for strategy, taking out the mind of the shinobi allied forces when on top of the Ten Tails, as well as recognizing cell structures such as medics not being on the front lines. He shows great foresight, placing a ceiling tag on Obito's heart that prevented him from jeopardizing his plans. Yes, the tag was removed, but Madara was brought back at that point, so he had much more control over the situation compared to just being dead and Obito like proceeding with the Ten Tails plan, which is probably why he didn't have any issues with Obito dying, even if I don't think he would have won that fight. You see great general knowledge from Madara, knowing about the origins of chakra, as well as having extensive knowledge from each of the 5 nations, the tailed beast, and even the nature of shinobi and how the cycle of hatred is formed and why the world they lived in was a wheel that kept spinning over and over and over, with hatred taking over hatred, with something needing to be done, a savior to break the wheel. He shows great Jutsu Intelligence, wrapping the Susanoo around the Kyuubi, even earning him praise from Hashirama, or maybe even more so instantly mastering Sage Mode, which is a complete 180 to Madara's normal fighting style, relying on his enhanced perception. And he obviously shows great manipulation, plunging Obito into darkness. This one's probably the most self-explanatory. I believe Madara is the most balanced out of these categories, dabbling in each of them and excelling at each of them. So while you can make a case that anybody could be in this overall slot, as there's a lot of intelligent shinobi, I think he just encapsulates a lot of what this series dictates to be quote-unquote intelligent. So that's the video. Let me know if you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.